Well, certainly, if you remember, I'm talking about the late 30s. I mean, Lavin's system of notation at that time was crude,
Yeah.
basic, and things were not highly developed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the value lies in considering the viewpoint and, as they say, where it's coming from.
Sure.
And as I see it, the limbs, various people have investigated much more refined, highly developed possibilities, details, for which they need signs and terminology.
Mm-hmm. That I would agree with. Definitely.
Which is fine, but
Yes.
if we can keep this more excuse me, general exploration, if we can keep that and the terminology that can then be linked into the higher development, so that people don't have to jump over rivers in order to follow.
Do you see this symbol or this usage, this concept, crossing over into structured notation as well?
I don't think these symbols have been used in structured notation.
But the concept is extremely seductive.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because
in choreographic works, I mean, oftentimes you're always looking for more ways of describing nuance in relationship to style, a personal style of a choreographer. So the concept is extremely seductive to me. Right now, I'm like salivating because it is. It's like seductive. But the problem that I would see if it crossed over into structured notation and into choreographic works is oftentimes you would need to have to hear the choreographer say these things out loud, and most of the time they don't. So what you see and what you think is there, you can't necessarily put in the score, even though it might enhance and make it stylistically correct, because it's not my decision to make if he doesn't say it.
Doesn't use the words.
Well, he would have to say, in all of choreographic works, the choreographer has to say something that makes it click for you, that you go, ah, I need an effort here. Ah, I need a new symbol here.
So
You know?
it's not. Yeah.
So, but we can't just, I can't be because otherwise I'm interpreting every single dancer what they're doing, and that's not what the idea. We're there to notate the choreographic intent, not the dancer's execution.
I think, though, sometimes the dancer's execution keys the choreographer to say, yes, that's what I want. And in that case,
But oftentimes they don't even say yes.
I
It
know.
just keeps
It
riding,
happens.
and you never really
balancing
know.
arms.
Yeah, but we digress. But I just wanted to ask, because
well, I want to just pick up on that. That the minute you go into structured notation, you are describing a finished product. However, if at the side you have a key that this is central to this movement idea, so you're reading the various symbols, and then you see, oh, basically the idea is such and such, central going to peripheral, let's say, then that could be very helpful. I'm just going to take an example of what I would have found very helpful. When I looked at the green table score that Gretchen Schumacher had written, and what she wrote for Death, you know, how he's this movement where it shows where the arms started and they went through here, bent or stretch this amount, and then they went through this amount and so forth. I thought, what it really needed is a path in space for the extremity, because what he's mowing, and that's what the movement is about. It's not about arriving here with X number of degrees bent or stretched. It works out. You follow the notation, you get the result, and then maybe, you'll think, I see what's happening. But had it been
Written more clearly.
Well,
Yeah.
even in the Mark Morris, there's a movement that they're doing with their arms, and it's like, I put flick, quotes, question mark, wrist flexion, question mark. None of the analysis that I have right now I'm happy with, because it's not about any of those things. But it is about movement happening from the elbow out to the fingertips. So it's like the lower arm with the elbow, but it's like, then the elbow, am I correct, then you could consider the elbow the central going to the peripheral? Can you isolate body parts that small? Would that be correct?
Are you saying that that you've got the sense of the whole body, and that this in
Well,
relation?
I don't care
to
what
the-
else is going on in the body, I'm just concerned about what's going on in the lower arms, and I'm not doing the movement
Oh, in
right
the
because I
lower
don't have
arm.
room.
So if you're saying the lower arm movement, then this becomes the central.
So would
And
the
this
elbow
is
become the
become-
central,
and
and
then
then this could
this
become the
What's the
peripheral?
advantage of thinking about the elbow being central?
It's just like
Because
if you
it's a
say-
lower arm movement, it's
Yes.
all about just the lower, so it's a very
Don't you pay
isolated,
attention?
small
Okay,
area
sure.
of the body.
It's just like when you
Oh,
gave the
what-
example of the
What's
hand.
not noticeable there is the flicking of the hand movement, yes.
But like when you gave the
But
example.
there's also impactive movement,
Yes.
impactive action,
Bye-bye.
there's, I don't wanna say relaxed, because it's not relaxed, but I just wanted to throw out why I asked the question that I did about structure notation, because immediately that movement came to mind, and that would possibly be the analysis that I'm looking for.
So remember you gave the example of the hand, and then you said in this case, you can make the wrist become the periphery and the central, and this becomes the periphery. Well, couldn't that be true also of the lower arm? That's what I think you're saying. Now I'm thinking about this portion. It doesn't matter its relationship to the wrist. Think about this portion, and this is the center, central, and this is the periphery.
Well, this could be the central, that could be.
This could be the
So it could be
central,
anything we
any
want.
body part, portion.
Correct.
You do that.
Now you see, we're going into more detail than
Already.
I have experienced. The need for
Let's see.
Maybe if we
I
could,
guess
but
also, you know,
maybe we need
they
to
always,
back up then.
when I was studying at Lynn's, which was a number of years ago, I mean, we're talking the 70s, you know, central movement was more of a central initiation, so that you could have, you know, you thought of something as being initiated from the center, that this would be a peripheral movement, even though this is more central and that is more distal, that was still a peripheral movement. I mean, there were things like, you know, locomotor. I think that the most interesting I found was when we were discussing having a peripheral locomotor movement, like some of the geisha walks, as just a peripheral walk, whereas almost all were viewed as central. This is, the walk has to be central. It's a locomotor movement. It has to be central. It has to move your center of gravity. But you could actually have what is considered a peripheral walk, where it isn't at all central in initiation.
We
another
can,
example.
yeah, we could talk about, go ahead.
Baroque dance isn't centrally, it's
A lot of it,
like the geisha,
is-
so
yeah.
as you demonstrated that.
Since you for Atlanta,
Yeah. I know, things have
Jan-
changed
yeah,
since I was there.
Jan Forsick, and again, we can come to this in a little bit, because I don't think we've chewed on everything, at least in my mind, sufficiently. Now that Anna's here, I want to get everything I can. But they teased out some different categories and used these terms in addition to the term transverse. And the category, they've categorized and clarified to a certain degree. So again, we can come to that later.
All of the things that you were just talking about now is not spoken of as central and peripheral. It's spoken of as core, midline, proximal, or distal. So it's in the body category of
Right.
where, if you're talking anatomical structure, where the movement is happening, and central, peripheral, transverse is spatial language.
And there's also
See, that
CPT
wasn't how
tension.
it was back then. It wasn't talked about as spatially. It was internal motivation.
Yeah,
And in motif, is this also known as central and
that's
peripheral?
that's a whole other topic.
In
It's
motif,
a
is this
central-
central?
that's a
Because in
central
structure,
pathway.
a central path. Okay.
Yes.
And that's peripheral path.
And
And-
back then,
But now we need to
And
add
a
path
trans-
to distinguish it from
Right.
this central and peripheral.
Right.
Technically, you should say always a central path of the arm
You're
or
getting
peripheral path rather, so it doesn't conflict with this concept.
right. Because and again, we're kind of diverging. Yes, this in the LMA there's central and it's central, peripheral, and transverse.
What's
Yeah,
transverse?
transverse.
All right. There's a
that
whole other.
has changed also, I'm sure.
Yes.
Can you just give it?
Should we?
No, you don't need to do everything. You just need to say what transverse is.
Well,
I can't without telling you
transverse,
this stuff.
when I studied at LIMS, this may have changed, was going between a peripheral and
Pathway.
pathway. It was a
Oh.
pathway, it was
Right.
used in, what is what is the name of the book? Laban's
Correct?
Choroidics. Right, a traverse path would be one in which you wouldn't go on the periphery, but you'd go through, for example, in the A scale, or you'd go from
Right.
something that would be, for example, side high to a back diagonal low.
Right. It's between.
So in structured LM, is that the same as a direct path?
No.
It would be, there would be a direct path, but
direct
it
path
would
would
have
be-
less, it
Draw
would,
the straight line from
yes,
A
it would be
to
a
B.
direct path, but it would not, the intent is not as much a direct path as where it's going from and to. That is, you can have a direct path from, well, maybe it is more of a direct path from here to here, but it had to go from, it had to change in planes. You know, you have the different planes. It had to change from the
You go-
horizontal plane, the vertical
Oh, so
plane,
that's
and
You
the
go
sagittal
from
plane.
plane.
Corner of
plane-
one plane
plane
to a
to an-
corner of
corner of
another
another
plane,
plane.
passing through the third plane.
Right.
This is
And
Exactly.
that's not direct path then.
And it has
That's-
implications.
Well, it's a direct path,
Similar.
but it's a specialized
cousin.
direct path.
May I check what you mean by direct path?
Yes.
Do you mean straight path?
not necessarily.